Hey guys, back again looking at another Girlsundpanzer kit. This time we're looking at Platz's boxing of the Sherman Firefly by Auska in 1/35 scale. Let's open her up and take a look. So, starting with our first sprue, we've got build up for majority of the suspension parts as well as the wheels, given two different options for wheels, closed and open type, as well as a full build up for the suspension system. We'll get into a little bit of this open space on back of them a little later, as they do something interesting with this kit there, as it does give you the full ability to build up a full working suspension system, which is interesting. But like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit. Next up, we've got our main hull part, including our turret. Detailing on it is very impressive, and it's quite fine, especially with the welding bead work and some of the detail markings that go there. Side skirts are alright. There is, however, a fair amount of ejector pin marks on the backside, so that is something to be aware of during cleanup. As for the turret, nicely cast and has a very subtle cast iron effect to it. I don't know how well this will show up on camera, but overall it's effective and in scale. The only thing I would say is double check sources to make sure that level of cast iron effect is correct. But overall, I think it'll do the trick. Moving on, next up, we've got our sprue containing parts for the main gun, as well as a couple other odd and end detail parts, as well as one crew figure. No, for if you're going to build it up with the markings included, this isn't going to be used, but it never hurts to have an extra figure lying around. As for the gun, it's molded in two pieces and has two different muzzle brakes included. This is one area, given just how prominent the gun is for the Firefly, I would say it's be worth it to swap out the plastic part for a metal barrel. It's entire point of the Firefly is the gun, so I would say yeah, it's worth it to spend a little extra, get best looking gun you can. And that all the detailing on the rest of the parts are finally done. Again, a fair amount of ejector pin markings on a lot of parts. Fortunately, the ones that do have it the worst are on the backside of the part, so those won't be seen. So it is something to be aware of during cleanup. Continuing on, we've got some more wheel parts. Again, casting is quite well done and is very sharp and nicely in scale. More detail parts here, as well as some of the build-up for the front end of the tank, various hatches. Again, nicely detailed, though there are some prominent ejector pin arcs that will need to be cleaned up. Also feel like some of the machine guns are a little lacking in their presence. Again, I think if you're going to do something with them, metal barrels would not hurt. But especially for the internal machine guns, it's not as critical as the main gun. Next up, there's other odd and end detailed parts, as well as they do give us these opaque periscopes for the viewports. They do include clear parts for them, which we'll look at in a minute. Some of the various other smaller detail bits. Not much to say there. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. For the lower hull, instead of doing a single tub-like structure, they've instead opted to go for this fully broken down approach. it's interesting. However, I do think it is going to present a major challenge getting everything properly aligned and put together. Probably the best comparison I can think of would be into the main gear bays on the Hasegawa Phantom, and just how those are broken down, trying to get those to line up correctly. But we've got our main bottom part, which builds up to our sides, and the various back components. So this is probably going to be the most challenging bit of the kit, is getting all of that stuff lined up correctly. Now, I'm keeping the clear parts in here. We've got a couple polycaps for the wheels, which, as I said, they move. Now, interestingly, as I mentioned before, they give you a working suspension system. They include this small rubber bit of rubber for you to cut out and add the suspension parts, cushioning into the suspension parts. This is interesting. I've never seen something done like this. I'm curious to see how well it works. Definitely an odd choice, but we'll see. And as I said before, we got clear parts for the periscopes and the lenses. Odd that they include a opaque versions, but I don't know. For the track, you're given rubber band type. Interestingly enough, they didn't do it as a single full run. They did it as 2 half runs that you then glue together. So you're going to unfortunately deal with 2 different glue seams for the tracks. So that's a bit of a downer. A bit of an upper, though, is that they do give you a fret of photo etch. And for a lot of the detail parts, though some of the instructions in the book are a little confusing, but if you build a Sherman for a lot of it, you can probably figure out from memory. But yeah, definitely having as well the grill parts will add to it. Now, this particular boxing also include a sheet of battle damage decals. And while I personally don't think I'd use them when I build it, it is a nice inclusion, and you might use them for other kits. And lastly, we have our decal sheet for this particular, the Girlsundpanzer markings. Don't know why, but the last few have seemed like some of the colors have been a little washed out. This one arguably is probably the worst. I don't know. I think their quality control might be going down a little. So that's it for parts. Give me a second to get everything back in. And we'll move on to the instructions now. Now, as I was mentioning before, the suspension builds up into full working suspension and includes the rubber bits that you got to cut down to size to provide the proper spacing for the wheels. And interesting enough, it will be I want to see how it ultimately works, as it's not something I've seen on any other armor kit. So building that up will be a little bit of a challenge since it is working. I'm still not sure exactly how they're going to have you attach these. It almost looks like you snap them in. Personally, I say it'd probably be easier to hold off attaching that part till you pre-mount those and then close everything up. As I'm not. It's a little odd how they have it diagrammed out. Moving on to the building up of the lower hull, as I said before, why they chose to do this, I don't know, but it will provide a bit of a challenge there, and probably we're going to spend a decent amount of time. I almost wonder if it might also be smarter to add in some cross support bars just to, help with alignment and keeping everything together while the glue sets up. But once you get out of there, then it's basically doing all the basic details that you'd expect with a Sherman chassis. Nothing too outrageous. Just take your time, make sure you're getting all the various components put in place. After that, though, it's pretty straightforward. Just like I said, if you built a Sherman before, this part will seem very familiar to you. Again, building up the gun, which thankfully they do allow for positioning, but yeah, overall, once you get done with the lower hull, everything else will flow pretty smoothly. So, what do I think? Well, I think it's an interesting kit. I think they made some strange choices with suspension and with the lower hull, but I do think it's going to build up really nicely once you do get through those difficult spots. Do I think it's one you should maybe invest a little extra money, like I said, with the gun, and maybe even go with a metal set actual axe? I would say yeah. Is you do get a lot of detail in this boxing. So I would say it's definitely one to invest in. Would I recommend this for a younger, more junior model? No, it's definitely one I would say pass on till you get a little more skill. Is it a good step up kit? Yes. Is it a good one for more advanced models? Definitely. So that was a look at Platz's boxing of Auska's 1/35th scale Sherman Firefly in Girlsundpanzer markings. Good kit, and could be made better with a little aftermarket love. So, until next time.